Hey guys, Hashi here. Today we're going to be making a video. It's going to be a bit more unscripted. This is kind of just more of like a rant. Um, I have this like list of things I want to talk about like rules and policies that GW has been doing for like the actual like a game of 40k, and I thought we could go over it today and just kind of talk about it. I think it's a pretty interesting subject in the community to talk about and all that sort of things. So without ado, let's get into it. I don't know what's going to be on in the background. I don't know if I'm going to just have like a static image or something. I really don't know. I'm sorry. But let's start off with I think that no model, no rules is actually like a really good policy. For like a new player especially, it is really helpful knowing that any option you'd want to equip your guys with, it's right there in the kit. You don't have to worry about it. There's no more like you have to hunt down 4 boxes of something or order from some like third party that everybody buys from. And that kind of tangents into my second point, which is about Chapter House. For those of you who don't know what Chapter House is, around 5th, 6th edition-ish, GW is publishing a ton of rules with no plans for models. And so a company, logically speaking, called Chapter House took up the opportunity and started just making models for it, because, why not, right? And this led to GW getting very pissy, and they eventually sued Chapter House, and Chapter House lost. And this is also why Imperial Guard is now Astra Militarum. Space Marines are Adeptus Astartes, and all that sort of stuff is from Chapter House, because GW can't copyright Space Marines. And so Chapter House would just make things like Space Marine whatever, right? And so it would pop up on Google and all that sort of stuff. During this period as well, the Storm Raven was made, and because it didn't have a model for quite a bit, people just put a Land Raider on a flight stand, and there's like memes about it. I'm sure I'll hunt down and put on the screen right now. But yeah, I think the current system is just like way better than what we have back then. Because if you want a model, you can just go buy it, right? You don't have to hunt it down. You don't have to like play all these games of, well, you should actually buy these 2 boxes and then combine them together to make one unit. Like, no, that's all just so silly, and I don't really see a point in doing that. And especially in like the modern era, where like 3D modeling is at its biggest that it's ever been, 3D printing is the biggest it's ever been. Obviously up till like the future, right? But people are just gonna make 3D models for actually anything they want. You want all Felonid Guard? There's some STL mega you can go find, and you'll have a whole army you can 3D print and never paint, right? Like, there is just no way we can sit here and pretend that it is at all possible to run a game as a big company, not like the Uwu or a small company that GW used to be. This is Games Workshop, debatably the second biggest gaming company in the world right now, possibly third, depending on where we're putting Konami and stuff like that, right? If they made right now, if they made a codex and they're like, yes, we are not making a model for this at all, this like new unit, no model. Dog, you already know every YouTuber and their mother is going to have a 3D model link in their bio. You're going to have people telling you that, like, you should actually go buy this other model. GW's leaving money on the floor for no real reason. And stockholders would be pissed, etc., etc., etc. It's just not a useful option. And like, if we go back and look at, like, units that famously need options, right? Like, Devastators. They come with 2 of every heavy weapon. And traditionally, the meta is all las cannons, all grav cannons, whatever. You had to have other ones to equip a full unit. And back then, the expectation was every person who was playing 40k had probably been playing 40k for years and did just have those options lying around, knew a guy who did, etc., etc. But nowadays, that is not the case. Since Indominus and Leviathan, both the biggest box sets ever released for GW in terms of sales, statistically, anybody who buys a box is probably a new player. They do not just have 12 las cannons lying around. They do not just have marine torsos lying around. They have to actually work with what's in the box. And it is not helpful to have these units that can't be equipped without buying a bajillion of every box, right? And some people will bring up like the Heresy, how the Heresy sells boxes with like all the options. But in reality, that's a scam as well. You have to buy so many options you're not going to use. And it ends up being that you have to buy 2 boxes for every unit effectively, right? Especially if you are like doing mono loadouts or something like really thematic like that. It is just not worth your money. And I don't know why we're giving GW this weird pass. I think it's because so many people like Wargear for some reason. And I put out a tweet about this a couple hours ago where I was like, I was putting out feelers for this new video about Wargear effectively, and I want someone to sell me on it, like someone to convince me. And the responses were effectively something close to, and I'm not trying to like straw man them or anything like that. I'm just kind of summarizing what they were. It was effectively like, oh well, back then if you really wanted to, you could like downgrade certain units instead of giving them the best stuff, and you could maybe squeeze out an extra unit. Um, but as we've seen traditionally, that's just not what people would do. At least like in terms of like the actual highest tier of play, right? Obviously, there's going to be like random Joe Schmo who maybe like missile launchers are really cheap, so they do missile launcher devastators, and then they squeeze out like a bike for their chaplain or something like that, right? Like I'm sure somebody has done that in the history of the game. Don't get me wrong. It's just never the best option. It's probably never the most effective option either for your points. And so it begs the question, well, why are we all clamoring for war gear, especially when there's armies like Tau, where no one even knows what the war gear looks like? Um, and getting back to the point, as we've seen very recently in Ninth, and I'm probably not going to be able to find a clip of this or whatever, but they accidentally made Plasma Inceptors free, and everybody ran them. And this is kind of a proof of concept that people run the best option, and not many people know how to tell what the second best is. There is no like long-standing community tradition of I'm gonna run the second best thing. The only people who pretend to do that are like your very weird, casual at all cost players. You know, those types of people who think that like all competitive play is the boogeyman. If you do anything competitive, you're like literally Satan. Those types of people. But even then, they usually don't even know what second best is. They're just avoiding the best option and then trying to come up with cope. Um, Now, as to what I think a good system for Wargear would be, is borrowing this idea from Tau, where no one really knows what they look like, and then going into like what the Intercessors and Hellblasters had in 8th, where you have 3 kind of side grade options. I think that's a very good model, especially because they all kind of look the same. And it leads to a much easier experience for the player, because it's like, oh, sure, you accidentally made the auto bolt rifle, but does anybody care? Is anybody checking you? No, they're just going to assume you used the best bolt rifle, right? Like, I don't even think they cost points at one point. You just, like, picked one for free. And we also saw this, I think it was towards the end of 8th, but, like, with, like, fighting styles for that Gravis captain. That might have been 9th, don't correct me. But fighting styles, too, are a very cool way. Instead of having, like, you have to go get a power maul from the Terminator kit or something like that. It's just like, no, you swing the sword a different way. You swing your thing a different way. I think that leads to a much more expressive way to play, where you're not limited by plastic and glue and magnets, right? And on that topic about Wargear tables, I want to kind of rant about the Heresy for a second. The Heresy datasheets suck. I'm sorry, they do. They're, like, why are we putting, their armor as, like, a piece of equipment instead of just saying, nope, they have this? Like, it's just really weird. And there's just so much back referencing you have to do for, like, abilities and whatnot. And it's just not really worth it. I think everything on a datasheet should be right there. And this is also kind of why I don't like universal special roles either. I mean, sure, for something like Plasma or Deep Strike, everybody knows what it is because it's such a meme. But for other things, you have to keep looking and looking and looking, flipping back and forth and back and forth, to the point where, like, certain codexes have to have a reference table. Like, guys, there's a much easier solution. Just put all the information on the datasheet. Barring, like, obviously, like, the army role, right? Like, we can all agree that, like, your army role shouldn't be there, and, like, maybe, like, your stratagem shouldn't be on your datasheet, right? But everything else should be there. You should not have to flip back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, if you're trying to actually figure out what a unit can or will do. And this isn't to say that, like, 10E is perfect either or anything like that. I think 10E has its flaws. I think it has way too many abilities. And I don't think, like, attaching units is any better than aura spam. I think those can be kind of, like, mitigated with each other. We should still have auras, for sure. We kind of do, but, like, the actual proper, like, reroll to hit auras or whatever. Another very popular topic people want to talk about in terms of rules is, like, strength versus toughness. I like the current system a lot. We can maybe augment it a bit with, like, if you are triple the toughness, it is like an auto kill or something, right? For, like, your very edge cases of, like a Titan versus a Guardsman or something like that, right? And obviously you can do the opposite, where if strength is a third of toughness, then something else, right? But I really don't like the old table. It's just so incremented for no real reason. Half the nuance there is kind of lost because there are certain, there's certain values that everybody actually cares about, like your Terminator equivalents, like what las cannons do, etc., etc. I think the simplification of SVT, strength versus toughness, was something more driven by players and how they actually played rather than, someone saying, oh, it's too complicated to learn. No, it's not too complicated to learn. It's just a pain in the ass to check if you forget the formula. Um, I think AOS is to hit into. Wound rolls aren't really good either. It works better for like a game where like everybody can kind of hurt everybody, I guess, but there's still some very weird cases, obviously, and some people don't like it. I think 40k should stay with like strength versus toughness to some degree. I think it's a little bit more fun, and it really steers away from like what D&D does with like you just kind of hit and then do damage, right? I think the really big last topic I want to talk about in this video, at least until I end up like saying what it is, talking about it, and then cutting the video because I'm like, oh wait, I just thought of something I should have included in my notes. It's like force org or force organization. Some people really like the percentage based one, but like that just requires math, and it's just not really helpful to like a player, right? Who isn't using like Battle Scribe or something. I personally think that like kind of what we had in 8th was like a pretty healthy idea, at least before like command batteries. Ninth was alright, but like the whole like costing CP thing, like it was a neat idea, but you could have worked with it a bit more. 10E obviously allows like the most freedom, and that's what Arcs of Omen did towards the end too, and it's obviously what people want. I think all the people clamoring for like a Force Org are really just butt mad that people aren't just running these like 1 HQ, 3 troops, 3 dedicated transports, and a tank, right? Like, no, I don't think armies should have to look like a real army. It should look like whatever you want to play. While this is a war game, it is a more fantastical war game, where like each game is like a snapshot of an army. So yeah, I think those like qualms are really stupid. Anyways, that's the video. I hope this is like a really fun video for someone to listen to when they're kind of bored. Maybe I'll make more rants like this in the future. I don't know. Thanks for watching.